In my first commercial lease negotiation, we were able to negotiate over 7 months of free rent. Yes. And it actually made the difference between us being profitable in less than 60 days in our business after investing over $300,000 to get our business open. And in this video, I'm going to explain exactly how to negotiate a commercial lease from A to Z. And this video will apply to all sorts of commercial leases, whether that's an office lease, a retail lease, a co-working space lease, an industrial lease. It doesn't matter. This will apply to all of those types of leases. Oh, and we wind up getting over $30,000 in tenant improvement credits back from the landlord. So the landlord gave us a check for over $30,000, and we wind up saving $30,000 on another part of the lease where the landlord would have taken advantage of us. So I'm going to tell you how that worked, how we did it in this video, and how you can protect yourself. So let's jump in. If you're new here, my name is Tariq Johnson. I built a multi-million-dollar franchise business owning locations in multiple states, in California and in Florida. And my wife and I actually, this is the new office, we just finished negotiating and moving into a new office space that we signed a 3-year lease for our businesses. So I'll tell you a little bit about that, how we did it, how we wind up negotiating on this specific lease, 3 months of free rent. We did 7 months of free rent on our other location. And I just signed a lease renewal for one of our franchise businesses. So I'll tell you about that as well. Again, I've done retail leases, now office leases, co-working leases, and this video will be your guide. Oftentimes a lease can become one of your biggest expenses in your business, and it's an area that can wind up costing you thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars. So making sure you negotiate a lease properly can determine the profitability of your business. Again, I mentioned in the intro that my wife and I got our first franchise business profitable in less than 2 months after investing over $300,000. And one of the main reasons was because of the free rent that we negotiated in that lease. And we were very strategic and tactical about the way that we did that. That's one of the things I'm going to go into in this video. But if you do want to learn exactly how we got the location profitable in less than 2 months, I wrote a 7-step blueprint to business profits in 60 days. It's completely free. You can get it at my website. It's my gift to you. So you can grab it at tariqjohnson.com. The link is in the description below. It's a 28-page PDF on how you can get any business profitable in any industry at any time. So who is this video for? This video is for, one, if you're an entrepreneur, someone who wants to be an entrepreneur that just wants to educate themselves because you're being proactive in how to negotiate a lease. Number two is you're actually in the middle of searching for office space or negotiating a lease. You kind of don't know what you're doing. You want to make sure that you protect yourself, you don't get taken advantage of, and you put yourself in the best position possible. Or number three is you already have a lease, you already negotiated it, you signed it, and you just want to kind of look back and go, did I make a mistake? Did I get taken advantage of? Did I do the right thing? So either way, this video is for you. Also, make sure to subscribe to my channel below. My videos are all about how to succeed as an entrepreneur, tools, strategies, tactics, actions, mindsets that you need to have. And then also hit the like button for the YouTube algorithm and help show the video to more and more people. All right, so the first thing to point out, which is very, very important, which is have an attorney review your lease. This is so important, so important, so important. This is what wound up saving us over $30,000 in our lease. What happened was we had negotiated the main points of the lease, the 7 months of free rent. Again, I'll tell you how we negotiated the 7 months of free rent a little bit later on in this video. But there was a little bit of fine language and fine print in the lease that our attorney caught. And if she hadn't have caught it, we would have wind up having to start paying rent a lot earlier on, and it would have wind up costing us about $30,000. So hiring an attorney to review the lease can be really, really key. Now, I realize that not everyone might have the money to hire an attorney. In that case, we paid $3,500 in order to have the attorney review the lease. This was for a retail lease. It was a 10-year lease with multiple 5-year options, and it was a really big deal. So for us, we were investing over $300,000 to get this franchise business open. We were not going to skimp on that. But for you, if you want to be able to hire an attorney in an affordable way, there's actually a legal subscription service for business owners that's as cheap as $49 a month, and you can have them review documents on your behalf. I'll leave a link in the description below where you can sign up. It's a really valuable service, and for you as a business owner, there's going to be many times where you just need to pick up the phone and be able to talk to an attorney, and for just that $49 a month, you can at least just hop on the phone and get some business advice and be able to have documents reviewed for you. So make sure that you secure an attorney to review your lease. Now let's jump into some of the other points. All right, so number one, how much space do you need? So you got to figure out how much space you actually need for your business. I mean, this is one that sounds pretty obvious, but just know that, the more space, the more it's going to cost. So as an example, typically in commercial real estate, it's priced per square foot. So if you have $1,000 a square foot, and let's say it's $2 per square foot per month, then you're going to be paying $2,000 per month for your space. So if you're going to look at a 2,000 square foot office and you don't need 2,000 square feet, well, you're going to pay a lot more than you need to be paying for extra space that you don't need to be using. So you need to determine and figure out, like, how much space do I actually need? And then depending upon how long you plan on being in that specific space, maybe you want to grow into it, or maybe it's just temporary. So my wife and I, we were in a co-working space for our online businesses where like the offices were literally like maybe 150, 200 square foot. I mean, they were tiny, right? But for us, it worked, and we were only paying like $500 a month for that office space. Now we just moved into an 1,100 square foot office space that has 4 different offices in it. So my wife and I each have our own offices. Now I'm going to have this whole recording studio where I'm going to be doing my podcast when I launch my podcast. It's not decked out yet, so I got this nice little plant here and just this little setup, and you can kind of see my shadows, and I'm making puppets here. But you got to determine how much space you need, all jokes aside, and just know that depending upon the layout of the space, it will feel different. So if you determine that you need 1,000 square foot, well, go look at a few different options for 1,000 square feet and get a sense of how it's laid out. Because 1,000 square foot in this office could feel different than 1,000 square foot if it's just an open office, and then you got to do all sorts of construction or putting up walls or improving the space in order to get it where you need to get it. So be very thoughtful about that, how much space you need and what sort of effort and construction and improvements that you need to make in the space. So the second thing is, how much can you afford? So, I would really start here, and I put this before searching for the location, because a lot of the times your price will determine the location. So figure out, like, how much can you afford to spend in your business? So when I was just launching my online business, although my personal financial situation, I could have signed a new lease, I believe in getting businesses profitable as soon as possible. You want to try to reduce your expenses in the beginning as much as you can. You start to reinvest in your business, so that way you have cash flow coming in from the business. So we started out in the co-working space, only $500 a month, and now moved into this office space where the lease is much more expensive. And so when you're thinking about your business, you want to have 6 to 12 months of your office lease in savings, so that, God forbid something happens to your business or it's taking longer to ramp up, that you're in a position where you're not going to default on the lease. And a lot of the times in a commercial lease, you have to fill out a personal financial statement. So the landlord is going to want to see how much money you have in savings, how much money you have in investments. They're going to want to run your credit. They're going to look at your entire personal financial situation, not even just for your business. Many times you personally have to guarantee the lease. So even if you wind up shutting down your LLC and your LLC goes bankrupt, well, you personally are still on the hook for those rent payments. Now there's a fine line here, right? Because if you know that, as an example, you securing an office space or a retail space for your business is going to actually help you get new customers because it's going to give you more visibility or credibility or whatever it is, then maybe you're just scraping together money and you don't have 6 or 12 months and you find a landlord that's willing to take a risk on you. I get it. I understand that. As an entrepreneur, you're always playing that delicate balance between the risk that you're taking and the possible reward. So obviously you want to put yourself in the best financial position as you can, but I also understand if you're just scraping together money and taking a big risk. Also keep in mind though that the landlord in commercial leases often asks for your first month rent and a security deposit, and sometimes they'll ask for your last month rent as well. So you could be putting up 3 months of rent when you're just signing your lease. You want to make sure that you're in a financial position to be able to do that comfortably and still have money for your business. All right, number 3, location, location, location. Man, location is huge, especially if you're signing a lease for a retail business. So as an example, our franchise business, which is a retail juice and smoothie bar, location is key because we want to be on a road where there's a lot of traffic, a lot of visibility, people can see us, and they can get in and out of the shopping center very easily. Now, for the lease we just signed, which is just an office lease where my wife and I do all of our work remotely, we do business coaching, we do recording for videos and YouTube and online products. Well, we don't actually have any like clients or customers or anyone that we need to actually meet with in our office. So we didn't really have to be in a location to support that has visibility. But for us, we did want to be in a location that's close to our home. So we're about 5 to 7 minutes away from our house, and we're in like the heart of Orlando. So, you know, we have access to a lot of good restaurants and food and different things like that that's close by us. But you really want to think about your location of your business depending upon the type of business that you're in. And so the amount of space you need and the amount you can afford is going to determine the location that you're looking at. So as an example, if you're looking for really, really cheap real estate or you need a warehouse, that's going to determine what location you search for your real estate in. And if you determine that you can only afford $1,000 a month for your lease, although you may want to be in a certain location, there may not be any options available for you based on your certain price point. But there also might be opportunities for you to be able to sublease and be in an office within someone else's office and be able to share space. So location is something that's really important to think about. Make sure you narrow down the area that you want to be in based on the business that you own. Lease term. So lease term is very, very important. It's important for a couple of different reasons. Number one, again, if you're in the type of business where you have a retail business, well, you want to be able to sign a long enough lease and make sure that you're able to be there long enough so that if it takes a couple of years for your business to really start growing, that your lease doesn't expire and you're like, oh, I got to move out and find another space. I'm going to tell you in a little bit how you can do that and how you can protect yourself and make sure that you can stay in a lease for as long as you need to. But the lease term is very important. So you need to play that delicate balance of making sure that you put yourself in a position to be there as long as you need or want for your business, but you also need to make sure that you put yourself in a position where you don't need to be there for as long as the landlord might want you there for your business. So as an example, my wife and I, we really only wanted to sign a 1 or 2 year lease because we just didn't know what our situation was going to look like, if we're going to wind up moving to a different area that we live in, and we just didn't know. But the place that we found, the location was perfect. I mean, we love the location. Like I said, it's about 5 minutes away from our house. It's in the heart of where everything happens in Orlando, so it's a really cool and vibrant area. The office was perfect. I mean, it was set up exactly how we wanted it. And so, but the landlord would only do a 3-year lease minimum. So for us, we had to balance and kind of sacrifice and go, okay, well, guess we're going to sign a longer lease than we wanted to sign. But sometimes you can find landlords who will only do a 1 or 2 year lease. Maybe you're just getting started in your business, you're not sure if it's going to work out, and you want to reduce your risk as much as possible, so you want to sign as short of a lease as possible. Now, on the other side, if you're in a retail location or a warehouse or something like that, where you're doing a lot of things in your business and you want to maintain that location, well, then maybe you're signing a 5 or 10 year lease in the beginning to make sure that you can secure that lease. The other part is having renewals negotiated within your lease. So as an example, the first lease that we signed for a franchise location was a 10-year lease with 3 5-year options. What that means is that we had a 10-year lease term, which means that we're committing to being there for 10 years. Now, a location like our franchise, where we invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in building out the space to make it custom to our business, and in equipment that is, some of that equipment is anchored in and built into the business, we were comfortable and confident in signing a 10-year lease. The way that an option works is an option after your first lease term ends, you have the right to be able to continue on for 5-year periods. So in our lease here, we negotiated another 3-year option in this lease. So although we're here for 3 years, we can extend for another 3 years if we need to. So it's really important that you take a look at those lease option terms and make sure that you're putting your business and yourself in the best position. All right, so now let's talk about the different types of leases that you can negotiate, and make sure you stick around for this, because depending upon the type of lease that you're going to negotiate, it could either save or cost you thousands of dollars. So number one is a full service lease. As an example, this office space that we signed a lease for is what is considered a full service lease. What that means is we make one payment, we make a flat payment, and then that covers the rent, that covers utilities, electric, water, taxes, maintenance. There's all sorts of things that are covered within that lease. So for us, it's the most ideal situation. The only thing that's not covered in our lease is phone and internet, and that's really not a big deal. So for you, one of the benefits in signing a full service lease is that you don't really have to worry about getting utilities set up, getting water set up, getting electric set up. Usually when you set those things up, then you have to place a deposit for each one of those things. Those deposits can be pretty significant. For some of our retail space, we had to put down $700,000-$800,000 deposits with the utility company. Now, the second type of lease is what's called a triple net lease. You'll see that as sometimes as NNN as the type of lease. And so that type of lease means that you're paying rent, and then you also have to pay taxes, insurance, and maintenance. Now, a lot of times this is going to be more associated with a retail type of lease, but it could be with other type of leases as well. So those leases are a little bit more complicated. You really want to make sure that you're getting advice from an attorney. What I can tell you here is that you want to make sure that you have caps negotiated in that lease on how much the landlord can increase the maintenance costs and the taxes and insurance, because I can tell you we've dealt with situations now with our landlord where at the end of the year we get a reconciliation where all of a sudden they're asking for thousands of dollars because of the increases in the maintenance cost for the business. And actually I'm in the middle of debating with for the location that we already sold with the landlord, because they tried to increase, basically double the amount of the maintenance costs, but we had negotiated specific language that had a cap on how much they could increase the maintenance cost. So this is a really, really important point when looking at a triple net lease, where you're going to be on the hook for the maintenance, the insurance, and the property taxes. Now, property taxes, you typically are not going to be able to really negotiate a cap, because the property taxes is just based off of the increase in the property taxes, and the landlord usually has no control over that. What you do want to make sure is that how they're dividing it and calculating it, that fine language is something that works out in your favor. And then the last type of lease is a double net lease where you're just paying taxes and insurance and the maintenance is not included. All right, so let's talk about now the main points to negotiate in a lease. Make sure you stick around because these are the points that will save you a lot of money. So number one is the rent or price per square foot. In commercial leases, most of the time you're gonna pay as a price per square foot. So that's really important to think about, again, because depending upon the size of the space is going to depend on what your price per square foot is and what your total rent cost is. So you want to negotiate as hard as you can on the rent and price per square foot, because oftentimes in a lease, you're going to pay 3% increases on that amount year over year. So as much as you can get it as low as possible in the beginning, that'll be helpful. Most of the time, in my experience, you're going to have the least amount of flexibility in negotiating that part because that's where the landlord makes the most amount of their money. So as an example, with this space, we weren't able to negotiate any money off the price per square foot. The area that we're in was in very high demand, and there was actually still a tenant that was paying here that had moved out because they got bought by a bigger company. So we really didn't have any leverage. For you, when you're negotiating, figure out how much leverage you have. Sometimes the landlord will try to say that, hey, we got other people looking at the space. It could be a tactic, it could be true, and you have to figure out what that delicate balance is and how much room you have to negotiate the price per square foot in the lease. The second part is tenant improvement credits. So tenant improvement credits is basically when you go in and you spend and invest money to improve the space. So as an example, talking about how we got over $30,000 back from our landlord, well, for our franchise location, it was a brand new space. So it was completely empty. I mean, it was just drywall in there. We went in and spent hundreds of thousands of dollars building it out and making it look like a juice bar. I'll post some pictures here so you can see of what some of those pictures look like and what the raw space looked like as we built that out. So we had negotiated in our lease a certain amount of price per square foot that we got back. So we wound up getting back over $30,000 once we actually opened the business and got a certificate of occupancy from the landlord. In our office space here, we didn't negotiate any tenant improvement credits because we weren't doing any tenant improvements. And actually, we actually got to benefit from the fact that the previous tenants left thousands of dollars of furniture and some of the improvements that they made. There's cabinetry in here, there was a refrigerator, there's desks that they left, there was computer equipment that they left. So we got to benefit from that. So it wasn't something that we negotiated. How you negotiate tenant improvement credits will depend on what type of lease that you're negotiating and what your needs are in terms of what improvements you're going to make for the space. Now, free rent, this is the fun part. Free rent is so exciting because even if your business is just in the point where it's taking off, or it still feels scary to sign a new lease, when you negotiate free rent, it helps you get ramped up. So in our first location, we negotiated 7 months of free rent. Initially, we were able to get 4 months of free rent. And what happened was the franchise company, we were able to leverage them in them not wanting to approve the space with the landlord. So in a franchise, the franchise company has to approve and sign off on where you're going to be leasing because they want to make sure that you're successful. And so we were able to leverage that with the franchise company and the landlord and then be able to squeak out and get even more months of free rent. And from what I was told, we were the only tenants in the entire shopping center to get that much of free rent. So what happened was, because of that free rent, that's 7 months that we did not stroke a rent check. We were able to get our business profitable right away, again in 60 days. And then by the time that 7 months rolled around and we did have to pay rent, our business was already doing well over $40,000 a month in sales, and we were profitable now even with paying rent and remained profitable ever since then. So free rent is really big. Here in this office space, we were able to negotiate 3 months of free rent. Initially, the landlord was only going to include 2 months of free rent included with a 3-year lease. what I did was we didn't use a broker to negotiate the lease. So when you negotiate a lease, oftentimes you have a broker who assists you in negotiating the lease. And on the buyer side, similar to when you buy real estate, you don't pay a fee for the broker. The landlord winds up paying the broker's commission when you sign the lease. Because of the fact that my wife and I have negotiated multiple leases before, and my wife even more so than me in in her businesses that she's owned previously, we felt comfortable that we didn't need a broker. It was a pretty straightforward situation. And so what I did was I calculated how much the landlord would have paid a broker for a commission if they had been representing us. And I said, look, you would have paid a broker well over $3,000 in commission. Our rent is $2,600 a month. We'd like to have an additional month of free rent since you didn't have to pay a broker. They had to get approval with the owner of the center. They wind up coming back and saying yes. So this is a really key point because, that means 3 months of not paying rent. So we moved in here April 1st, 2021. We had to pay first month's rent with the lease. So that means we're not going to pay our next rent check until August. So that gives us time to continue to build up savings and generate sales and grow our business and be in a really comfortable position until we have to spend and write that next rent check. If you're in a retail space, you want to make sure that you have a non-compete. What does that mean? So in our juice and smoothie business, we don't want anyone else in the space selling juice or smoothies or acai bowls. So you have to have language negotiated in that lease that prevents someone else from having a business that they are selling those products. So in our lease specifically, it was 10%. So there could not be anyone else in the shopping center that was generating 10% of their sales from like juices, smoothies, and it was defined. In our case, the franchise company helped us include that language and created that language for us, but you want to make sure to protect yourself if you're going to be in a retail space. Now, oftentimes, depending upon the industry that you're in, you may not be able to have much leverage here. As an example, you'll notice in a lot of shopping centers, there are multiple different food businesses. So you might just be able to negotiate, hey, if you have a Thai business or an Indian food business, that there's no one in that specific space, but you're not going to be able to negotiate and say there are no other food businesses allowed in the shopping center. That's probably not something that you're going to be able to do. The last part to negotiate is something that I talked about earlier in this video, which is having a cap on maintenance and the increases in the lease. This is so important because landlords, they will try to pass on as many expenses as they can to you. I mean, they're in the business of making money and you're just one out of, maybe 10, 20, 30, 100 different tenants that they have, and they're focused on their bottom line. So as much as you can negotiate on the front end and negotiate caps on maintenance costs and increases in the lease, it's going to really protect you and put yourself in the best position possible so that you don't get an unexpected bill like we wind up getting from the landlord. Guys, I hope this video helped. Drop me a comment below and let me know what you got out of this video or if it was helpful. I put a lot of thought into this video to really, put together my experience and some of the mistakes that I made and my wife made in negotiating leases to really make this video as thorough as possible for your guide. So please drop me a comment below and let me know what your thoughts are. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button for the YouTube algorithm, and also make sure to go to my website, tariqjohnson.com, so you can get that 7-step blueprint to business profits in 60 days. Also, I'll leave a playlist here on some other YouTube videos that I've made that I think you'll be interested in, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.